Hola community, welcome to Blender Today Live. This gathering where we see what's new in Blender. There are not that many new things. There are exciting things, of course. There is one in particular that was gonna get the name of this show related to the sequencer and compositor for dynamic effects. Actually, that was the title of this show. But I got reminded by Francesco just now that we are in the middle of the Blender Survey 2025. What is the Blender Survey 2025? Well, you may remember the Blender Survey 2024. If you don't know, it's the survey.blender.org. These are the results from last year. So basically, it's a bunch of questions that the Blender Foundation, the Blender Institute, everyone here thinks it would help to drive development by the community, to see how the community is doing, where are people hanging out, and if we're doing things okay or not. Actually, this can also be seen in dark mode. Nice. And I forgot to set my mode to dark, so I think I will do that so I can, and just there you go, so I don't blind you with this light mode. So yeah, this was the last year actually, and it took a while actually. Might you feel like it was not that long ago, because the results were very late. We had so many things to do, and also preparing this takes time. However, this year it should be less, sorry about the blinding, but should be less time, because we already did it this year. So anyway, the survey is here, so you can go, well, if you go to blender.org, basically it's in the homepage, or any page of blender.org, it's in the manual, it's in documentation, it's on everywhere pretty much. So this is the URL. You can read more about it if you want, but please share it so we know what people are I mean, we know more or less what, at least I do through these live streams, what people want and what they don't want. So it's gonna be nice. I think this year all the questions are pretty much the same as last year, except a few that were changed, a few were removed, and a few were added, by the way. So yes, I recommend everyone to get Blender, of course. I mean, it's free. What's there to lose? But you can say which version you started with, which where do you get Blender, right? You build your own or not. It's good to see where are people getting Blender, for example, or getting their news, because many people get news from, actually, if you look at the results from last year, many people get news from, well, I had it here, from blender.org. It means that not everybody goes to social media for news. And that's amazing, because social media, it can be overwhelming, especially nowadays, and it gets worse over time. So it's good to take a break from social media. But how do you stay up to date with what's new in Blender? Well, in Blender, blender.org is a website, like a regular WordPress website, where you can just go to /feed, and you would get the feed, the RSS feed, where you can add it to your, I don't know, Thunderbird or any other client to get the news from the Blender website. There is also the code blog, has its own feed, code.blender.org/feed. This should be picked up automatically by other clients. Then there is the Dev Talk thread, which is also a feed. In fact, actually, in the Blender here, in the code blog itself, on the top, there is a feed of a feed. So this is the feed of the weekly update. So there are ways to stay up to date with what's new in Blender without actually having to go through social media. And there is one more thing. Soon, you will receive something like this. So here, I'm actually going to show you my email. So, okay, this is my email. So this email, you're going to get something like this soon. And it's coming from news.blender.org. It's completely legit. Actually, if you look at the details, it's legit. It looks legit now. You may have received before, a few weeks ago, before this, an email saying something about a Blender newsletter, that it was completely legit. It wasn't a scam, but it was a very early test of that newsletter. So it was very bare bones. It didn't have like this fancy layout. It didn't have like a logo and the address of where we are, and basically it didn't look very, very official. So that has changed. It now looks this pretty. It hasn't been rolled out yet, but you're gonna get an email. Everybody with a Blender ID is gonna get an email once about this new letter. This is the only time that we're gonna send this message. It's gonna say, if you want to stay up to date, you can go to subscribe, which is, it sends you to the Blender, your Blender ID, where you can subscribe there and unsubscribe from the same place. So that's it. That's everything you're gonna get soon, as in terms of spam. Yes, it is not a newsletter that you're gonna get every day on new things. There are only when there is a new release, so 3 times a year. Also when there is, because not even for technically there is a new release every month. Even today there was gonna be a new LTS release, but there were some issues, technical issues. Tomorrow there will be a new LTS release for 4.5 and 4.2. This means that you will be getting an email, but I think every month is too much. So we are not going to be sending emails every month. We're going to be sending only for the big releases, so 3 times a year. Then maybe for the survey 1 more time, and maybe for the end of the year campaign. Not for the Blender conference, for example. So at most, we're thinking you will get 5 emails a year, 1 per release. And so yeah, we don't plan to spam anyone. So yeah, go to, actually you can already subscribe if you want. If you go to your ID, Blender ID, and then you go to newsletter on the sidebar, you're gonna get newsletter. So actually I can send you this. You're not gonna get the email if you subscribe already, of course, but that's the place where you can already subscribe to the newsletter, and you're gonna get it before everyone, actually, because it hasn't been announced anywhere. So it's good to see. Even every month is not too much, no? Yeah, to me, like I wouldn't mind getting an email by someone like Blender or Inkscape or GIMP or project that I follow every month. And here someone says, I didn't get the email. Yeah, no, the email, as I mentioned, it wasn't sent to everyone yet. There's millions of Blender IDs. So the first batch, I think it was only 10,000 people, so at random. And many of them are like spam or bot accounts, who knows. So it's a big chance that you didn't get that email. And then the second batch hasn't been sent yet. It will be sent once we maybe today, tomorrow, because we wanted to make the email look legit, which is what I did last week. And that's how you can follow. So anyway, this is all this effort is to say that you can follow Blender news without being on social media. All right. Speaking of what's new, let's see what is new in Blender. Okay, and that's a survey. So I sent you the link to the survey. I sent you the link to the newsletter. I think we're good to begin with what's new in Blender today. So let me open what's new here. I made the list. There is around 400 commits, but more than half are just fixes, refactors, and cleanup. So 172 fixes. So we are 2 weeks away from the release of Blender 5.0. We are Blender 5.0 beta. There are new things in 5.1. Actually, the one that I mentioned before about the sequencer compositor, that is in 5.1. So yes, please report the issues. Let's not have a 5.01 like the week after 5.0. It's let's try to have it as stable as possible. So let's see. All right. Hi, Mexico City. All right. Let's start with A for animation. Well, related to animation, there is no new things. There are all things that came back. Which ones are? The timeline is back. As it's the same as in Blender, like it used to be a few weeks ago. It was removed temporarily, but based on user feedback outside of the animation module. Actually, this is more related to other modules that also use the animation, the timeline. So the timeline is not going away. It's still there, although there is a few differences in the new in the new timeline, the timeline that came back from the from where, how do you say, the grave. The timeline now by default doesn't show the sidebar. Yay, great. Then also it doesn't have the channels. There is no more channels. So if you add keyframes, you see only what would be the summary on the top. So it's very clean, very minimal. So compared to 4.5, it's very close, except it has these very nice new buttons in the header that I explained, I think last week, a couple of weeks ago, where you can jump to a delta, like 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever you choose. So that's the only difference. Everything else should be pretty, not even the keyframe, the default keyframe is there. So it should be pretty similar to what you're used to. And internally, I think in the future, there might be plans to make it a sub mode of the dope sheet. I think internally it is a sub mode, it's just not shown there. But anyway, that's it. And the other thing that came back also is the render play blast on keyframes. So this is an operator that is in the viewport that allows you to render an animation, but only on the keyframes. So if you have a keyframe in frame 1 and then 50 and then 70, it would only render these 3 frames as a sequence. That's it. Let's continue. Survey field, also nice. Thank you, Antonio and the rest. Let's see. What else? There is a bunch of changes, internal changes, build changes, cleanups. Blender getting clean because the cycle for Blender 5.1 started again. So there is things to clean, right? And let's switch to C for Compositor. Well, actually there is a new node, which is not new if in other areas of Blender, but in an effort to make Blender work better with Blender, the radial tiling node has been added to the Compositor. So you now can do these nice fractal effects. I don't know if we have documentation for this in the 5.0, because it used to be in another place, in the rendering, repeat zone, radial tiling. So this is the original. So there is no images, but trust me, it looks awesome. Hey, there you go. So radial tiling, you can make tiles in a circle, in a radial shape. Awesome. So this has been added to the Compositor. It was only, I think it was in shading or geometry nodes. It's not mentioned here. These release nodes are gonna get improved because I'm going through all these changes and I notice how the moment they add it, it makes sense for it to be in rendering, but what does it mean? Is it shading, texturing, geometry nodes, Compositor? We have way too many nodes now to keep track of where a node gets added. But anyway, for the Compositor, it's not going to have this node in 5.0, but it does now in 5.1. And as a reminder, when you see a PR like this and you see like, where is it? Where did it get merged? Well, nowadays you would just, if it was 2 weeks ago, maybe you can just see that it was merged into main. Main is the latest. So in this case, 5.1, because actually 2 weeks ago, this was already 5.1. But you can also go to the end and where it says merge commit, and you can see the commit. In the commit, you can press these 3 dots here and you can see in which branches was added. So if it says main, it's main. If it says Blender 5 release or other releases, it was in other releases. Let's see, some asset thumbnails got updated, but small things. Then the asset shelf preview for the Compositor has a new default size, which is 48 instead of 64, what it used to be. This is just the default size. You can always make it larger if you want, but it's in order to match the Compositor. So we have the compositing shelf and the viewport shelf, or the other editor shelf, like the image editor shelf, for example. Or actually in the viewport too, if I go to Vertex Paint or any other. So now you see this match. It used to be This used to be, I think, 64, which is nice to see that the detail in the thumbnails, but it gets a bit too much. It's a bit too large. Next. I think there is one that is still 64 by default, which is the pose library. So if you have a character with a pose library that shows in the asset shelf, it's still gonna be 64 by default. That's on request by animators. They say that they prefer to see more details at a glance. Okay, let's see. Blender 5.0 will release in 2 weeks. Exactly, in 2 weeks. The 11th of November. Allegedly. You know, they can always... actually, the beta switch in 5.0 was delayed for 1 week. So there are ways to extend that time, because it means that there is also less time for developers to fix things. There is 1 less week because beta got extended and so many more things got added in that 1 extra week. And that could mean that the release could be delayed 1 extra week, but not for sure yet. That depends on how many bugs you report. So please report bugs. The next change, so another node got supported that was supported in other places, which is the index switch node. So similar to the menu switch, now you have an index switch node, which is same as in other places, but now it's in the compositor. So welcome, compositor. Let's see. Next. The big thing I wanted to share this week is this one by Ramon Klauk. This is awesome. It's the same developer that added the radial tiling node, by the way, and he's a developer from the community. He's a contributor, like a volunteer. And this node makes a world of difference when in regards to the sequencer compositor modifier. So what this node does gives you some information the same way that an image info, object info, collection info. It gives you info about the strip, the current strip, which allows you to do very interesting dynamic effects. So in this case, you can see that there is this effect that like pops in and out, and it's using a texture, a Voronoi noise texture to use the factor and fade in, fade out. But that doesn't look very, well, it looks impressive, yes, but what is more impressive is that you can now control this dynamically. So, I mean, shall we? I'm already regretting, but shall we try this live? Because today I don't really have that many new things to talk about. Developers have been working on on fixing Blender mainly. So let's try. All right, let's try. Let's see it live. So here we are. I have an image and I want to do some compositing. So let's switch this to the compositor for the sequencer. And I had the strip active. It would be nice if I could just press new here, right? To just add basically do this process, add a compositor modifier and press new, like a shortcut would be nice. And let's see, let's do a fade in, a fade out. That should be easy. So let's see, the new node is called strip info, is this node, strip info. Then we need some kind of time mapping, so a time curve. So you have this time curve, right? This factor 0 to 1. The start frame will be, I guess, the frame start of these, in this case, like frame 19, 20, so. And then I guess the end frame, I want it to be the start frame plus some delta, right? So let's say I want my fade in to last 1 second. So I can do, all right, I want to add this to 24 frames per second. And then this factor, I can use it for, let's say, well, we're doing a fade in, so it would be set alpha or an alpha over, I guess. But let's try with set alpha. So let's see, I guess I want the image to be part of this image, and this will be the output. So let's see if it even works, because live demos always work great when you're doing them. So fade in, fade out. Nice. So that is in 24 frames per second. So do you see what I'm doing? Of course, it's much easier if you just do it the old way, right? You just go here and go to the strip settings and change the opacity to 1 and keyframe the opacity. You would even get a nice overlay here with a curve that shows you, you know, how the curve of fade in and fade out, but it's not as fun as doing it with the compositor, but also because that way you can mix it with anything and it's dynamic. Keying the opacity slider, like what I was just showing, that is not dynamic. If you move the strip anywhere else, then you will lose that keyframe because the keyframe is still at that position, but not if you use nodes, because this is dynamic. And this is amazing. We can have these kind of effects super dynamic, and it only took a few nodes. And you can actually even change the, oh, nice. Can I make it so it takes some time and then boom. Yeah, so because it's a curve factor. Awesome. These kind of things will really make, we can have now, and actually we could add a new asset for this, right? And then just use it from here and have all kinds of effects. This is the missing piece. There are more settings that you can tweak: location, rotation, and scale. You can get this information also from this node. You can have vector, rotation. I don't know why it's a value. Because it's 2D. Huh. I guess it's in degrees. But yeah, super nice. I really like this. So it actually worked. I thought it wasn't gonna work. So let's cut it here if it doesn't work and move on. Let's see, more video editing stuff. Well, video editing slash, compositor. It's so cool. The VSE compositor is CPU only for now, so that is a big downside. But it's new, it's work in progress. So the idea, as I said, it will be GPU. But what would you have preferred? To wait another version until the GPU and CPU compositor is supported, or have CPU for now and then next version in the future have GPU? I prefer to have it in small bits. Although I guess for marketing, you would prefer to have the whole thing super fast day one. But we know each other. I prefer to have small steps, and because CPU rendering, it's slow, but at least you just send it to the farm or your local farm, you leave it overnight, and you have some nice effects. Okay, next. Let's see, for cycles, there's not much actually. There are some changes in drivers version, a minimum version for AMD HIP GPU driver version from Windows got apt. So I mean, it's always good to stay up to date with your drivers. And in this case, the Adrenaline driver version went from 24.6 to 24.9.1. And the Pro driver version from Q2 to Q4. But you can check all these changes in the thread that I didn't do today yet. So has anybody actually made this? Let's see. So Blender community, Blender survey, yay, somebody made it. And I'm gonna add the full list here so people can have it. So nice. And this didn't work. The YouTube ID. Okay. Anyway, there is a link there, and you can see all the changes. The ones with the diamond are the ones that I am covering here. Let's see. Let's move on. The one thing I wanted to mention for cycles is this change by Damien Picard, which adds makes the UI for OSL cameras a bit nicer because it uses title case instead of the old just as it is, right? Like distortion K1 underscore. It looks a bit nicer by default. That's it. It basically takes the name of the variable and of the argument and just makes it title case. Let's see, draw mode, dependencies, documentation. Yeah, dependencies. Actually, we are now well into 5.1, which means we are in the 2026 version of the libraries, and there are some changes. Actually, there's some upcoming libraries to get excited about. This will be 5.1 live libraries, I think, and you will see the list of upcoming libraries. There is a library proposal there, library changes for 5.1. This is how they usually call these tasks, where you can see all the upcoming libraries, Python 3.13, and NumPy, OpenEXR, basically all these libraries, plus a couple new ones which have been proposed. They are not approved yet, but they will be. The ThorVG is a new library for SVGs, which should allow us to do more fancy things with the SVG icons that we use in Blender, supporting better support for add-ons to have their own SVG icons, but also internal handling of our add-ons. One thing I would like to have in our icons is that when you mouse over to have an effect or a color or something else, at the moment it only changes one color, one value. So yeah, actually it doesn't change anything, it's just opacity, I think. That's it. And there is another one, the live HEIF, which I guess is for, yes, AV1 image file format support. Nice. Okay, sidetracking, kind of sidetracking. Let's move on to Drox documentation extensions. This is a small change, but it will allow, and this one is actually, yes, this one is in, as you can see, is in both main and 5.0. So this means that even though this commit was 6 hours ago, this will make it into Blender 5. It's a change that allows translators, which you can be one translator. If you go to translate.blender.org, you can see the platform and ask and contribute translations to your language. This change makes it so the notification messages for extensions, such as it's outdated or it's updating or checking for extensions, these were all hard-coded in English, really bad, and now they can be translated. Okay. Fixes. So many fixes. So many fixes. Let's continue the list. And I mean, thank you for reporting, actually, but so many of the bug reports actually were not reported. All these bugs were not reported. Anyways, let's see. GL shaders, not much there. GPU, so much work done like internally for GPU, for Vulkan, for compiling shaders faster. So we're gonna skip all that and jump into the one change that made it to geometry nodes in this week, in this episode, which is an improvement on the UV pack node. It now has a few options to allow you to position or add a custom region for packing the UV islands. So these options are called bottom left and top right. You can pass on some vectors, and I will try to position the pack UV islands over there. A bit more freedom to create. What else? This change is by Ethan. Thank you, Ethan. Internationalization, more changes actually. The team is hard at work because during the beta is the best time to start. Although in this case, beta has been not very strict with the changes to the UI, which is really bad. But anyway, the translation team is doing a great job. Thank you. Icons changes, keymap. This is a quality of life change in the keymap, also by Damien Picard. This is a very small change, but actually you may have run into this issue a few times. So you know how when you're in the image editor, you can zoom in and out, let's say in the image editor. So say I render this, I'm in the image editor, and if I press 1, I'm in the 1 zoom, 2 is half the zoom, 4 is 25%. But you can also do like Shift 4 and then get like the opposite of that. You can also do one Control or Shift to change this. They're basically all the shortcuts. However, there was no way to press to go to the default zoom other than pressing 1. So sometimes you would be like Shift 2, Shift 4, and then Shift 1, and Shift 1 wouldn't do anything because it wasn't assigned to anything. You have to press 1 to go back to the default zoom. So this is just a convenience change that adds a shortcut to go to zoom level 1 when you press Shift or Control 1. That's it. Convenience. Then mesh. All right, so regarding to mesh, there are improvements in performance, many improvements. So the validation code for meshes, which is done all the time, Blender is checking every time before any operation usually that your mesh is okay. The validation that it's good to go. Can I perform this Boolean? Can I perform this operation in it? So this is done all the time, and it's important that it's fast. Well, it is now much faster thanks to Hans. So Hans made it, rewrote the entire code for checking if a mesh is valid or not, and split all the operations, all the checks for like, is this mesh, does it have, I don't know, loose vertices, or if it has, this vertex has neighbors, or if the edge has that many faces, like all small checks split into individual functions, which means it's a lot of monkey work, yes, but which means that each individual check can be optimized, which is great, but also it can be shared across other functions, which gonna in the future can make things potentially even faster. So in this case, a test with a 1 million vertex cube went from 200 milliseconds to 92, less than half the render, the calculation time. And this you will find everywhere. I think even like geometry nodes or just regular operations in meshes. This is so important. And it's even less code. So 1,300 lines removed and 900 added. So it's so nice. And it's even more clear when you look at the tests, which they're now since a few months in the main repository, that there are tests for everything. And this is new actually. This whole test file is new. So, okay, test if the vertex edge is invalid. Text that there's duplicate edge vertex indices. Test the bad face offset. Like test everything. So many, so much attention to detail. This is great because it means that this test run automatically every time the developers request it, or all the tests are run every night. So if something goes wrong, if there is a commit that breaks some kind of mesh operation, this will ring an alert and then alarm. The next day, people will see, hey, this broke. So potentially less bugs. And like that, there are two other improvements on mesh booleans, which improve performance. In these tests with two spheres, 130,000 vertices, the runtime for Boolean node went from 800 to 600 milliseconds, around that. And the manifold solver is also slightly improved. And the last change is also similar to that, avoiding some calculations that were not needed. We get a little speed up from 190 to 178 milliseconds, 8%. Thank you, Hans. Awesome. And moving on, the end of, so the n degrees of freedom. So those controls that allow you to navigate in all kinds of directions. Space navigators. Well, there is a new setting that allows you to adjust, or it automatically adjusts the speed of the fly mode. Apparently, this, when enabled, is calculated, the speed that you use to fly is calculated using the distance between the camera and the geometry you're viewing. If it's disabled, the speed is adjusted using Blender zoom value, as usual. And this fixes 2 issues actually. Nice. 2 bugs actually from this year, from July. So nice, good to see. All right, next. There is a new feature in the Node Wrangler. We're still doing new things in the Node Wrangler. Is this related to wrangling nodes or a feature that should have been in Blender? Let's see. Implement reload images for geometry nodes. Geometry nodes have had image nodes for a while now, while the image node was already supported by the reload images operator. Images defined in other nodes through image sockets were not. So this operator already existed before, it was just not covering geometry nodes. So the whole operator should be in Blender maybe, but the fact that it was covering all the other node tree types except geometry nodes, and makes sense to add it to geometry nodes. Awesome. Nice. And improvements and cleanups. Node Wrangler. So actually the good thing about the Node Wrangler being updated is that this is an extension. Actually, this is built in Blender. It will come with Blender, but any extension that gets updated, you can now update it even for older versions. So that's nice. Let's see in the nodes. So not Wrangler, but nodes. There is a removal and an addition, but the removal is visible and the addition is invisible. Let me explain. Do you remember this guy over here? So this guy over here, this is an indicator. It's a bit strange. It's 2 lines. It's an indicator that tells you that you can drag this header of this node header, move it to the side, and that's how you resize the node. Well, this didn't really work very, like, it had a few glitches, visual glitches when you zoom in and out. So it's now gone. However, it's not gone, like the functionality is not gone, of course. You can now just resize like you used to, just by dragging from the edge, because the nodes are rectangular, it's easier to define that this area is where you drag. And the addition that is invisible is that you can now resize the node also from the left side. So that's something that didn't exist before, and it's super nice. Because you can resize nodes from the left side, why you couldn't resize these tiny nodes, collapse nodes. All right. Let's see. What else? Actually, not much more. There's a very confusing change in the outliner perch, which I'm not going to mention, but go into detail, but it says outliner perch, do not allow deleting scenes, and then support deleting scenes. Which one is it? I think it's a fix, actually. If you look at it, it's mentioned as a feature, but it actually fixes one crash, because Blender was trying to delete a scene that it was packed, and scenes were not able to be deleted, because scene is basically the blend file, so you shouldn't be able to delete the active scene if you don't have any other scene. So there was some handling there that was missing, but it's just funny that the description is so confusing. So it is possible to delete in certain scenarios. Okay, some Python stuff. There is, some Python might as well share. I like this change because it doesn't seem like much. It says Python, stop HTTP background downloaded process when Blender dies. So when you kill Blender in the middle of downloading something like a add-on, a theme, you name it, Blender would keep the downloading open. Like the process will stay open even though Blender was killed. So now that has been fixed. So if Blender is killed, all the processes will be killed as well. But what I like about this is that this change is also by Sivren, who is working in the online assets. The online assets is one of those projects that was started this year, and it's on its way to becoming a project that we want to polish a bit more, we actually this week we had a design session about the how does it look when you download something, when you drag it into the scene, how do you show all those changes and the progress. So there are changes coming, and it's exciting to see this project moving forward, even though it doesn't look like it. It's like if you don't know about the online assets project, you will see this is like, what do you mean blend download there? It doesn't make any sense. And related to that, another design session we had last week was on a ongoing project that we want to propose to work on for 2026, maybe the end of 2025. It's the Blender updater, a notification that you get in Blender that tells you, hey, there is a new release. You know this. I know it's groundbreaking. I know no other software has such an indicator like this that tells you, hey, there is a new version. But you know, Blender, it's with the innovation track. No, it's something that it was promised for Blender LTS, and it's almost mandatory for LTS releases, long-term release, because it has a 2-year window where there is multiple releases once every month, and you want to update because you're only bug fixes. It doesn't have any new features. So this hopefully will help with that. But it's a notification in Blender, and we don't want to spam people. But I think it's fair to spam people for telling there is a new version that might fix the issues that they released, that they reported, right? Let's continue. Some refactors, this change, release note tools, revert, some changes were reverted. Template, this is a template update. So the sculpting template, there were some small changes. So in Blender 5, every file, whenever you go to save a file, the option to compress is enabled by default, because compression has become fast enough nowadays that it makes sense for it to be on by default. But the startup.blend, so when you open Blender, when you launch Blender for the first time, like this is a blend file. It's called startup.blend. It's part of the Blender source code, but it wasn't compressed. It was like 800 kilobytes. Now it's compressed and it's only 100 or so kilobytes. So anyway, this had to be updated for all the startup blends. And the sculpting startup blend, this is another blend file that is built in Blender. And since updating this file is a bit of a pain in the neck, because you have to be very careful when you update this thing. You have to open Blender, not touch anything, because any change that you do, everyone else will get it, because it comes with the blend file. So you have to be very precise. You have to open, okay, it's like, okay, which change do we want to do? We want to save, but okay, very, very precise. So because of that, we only do it every now and then. The last time we did it actually was Blender 2.8 in 2019. So it was due for an update. Since we're doing this change, we might as well change a few things. And the sculpting module suggested a few changes to enable some overlays. So origins, 3D cursor, annotation, and statistics. These overlays were not enabled, so they suggested to do so. So now when you open, you go to sculpt. In the overlays, you will see 3D cursor, stats, annotation, and so on. Then they also suggested to set the wireframes to 1 and the opacity to 0.6. Disabled, so you don't see them. But so when you enable, you see a bit more the effect. Small things. And what else? They also suggested for the feather option in the symmetry tools to be enabled, and for the delay viewport updates to also be enabled in the, I think it's in the tool and symmetry and feather, and then the options for delay viewport update. This is for performance, so it's a bit faster when you move around. You modify the view, and any update that you do, it waits for the viewport. And that's it. That's all. And the file has now compression. So the same thing has been done in the other in the other editors as well, in the other templates as well. Some of them I did earlier during the process, and some of them I did today after lunch for the regular start of the blend. Let's see what else is new. The user interface has a few changes. This one is super nice. This is I think it was a bug report or mentioned somewhere, but someone mentioned that when you rename an element, an object, from the outliner, that the view will center in the center. So let's see, I have Blender 4.5 here. So when you rename something and you have a long list, it would be super annoying. So I'm pressing C key here to add a collection with a shortcut. So let's say I select number 10 and I go up here and I press F2 to rename. You see how the UI jumps to the center. But that would also be the case when this was in the view. So if I have collection 12 and then I press F2 to rename, you will see the UI jumps. Very annoying and disorienting. So Harley, two of our UI developers are Harley and Hans. And he made it so it doesn't have to jump around if the item is in the view, or it will jump, but only just enough to have that item in the view. So nice, small attention to detail, and it makes for a more calm UI. So cool. So I think we should have this at some point in other places. I already made a task if we can have this in the UI lists or the tree views of our bone collections and other parts of Blender. That would be nice. Shape keys, vertex loops, and so on. All right. What else? Icons. We have colored icons in more places. So I can just show you a picture because I made this PR. So I know that I was going to show this in the live stream. So this is a change. So since 5.0, we tried to add a bit more colors to the user interface where it makes sense, where things can be themed. So in order to make a connection between what the icon does and what it corresponds in the UI. In this case, the theme for, I think this is a 5.1 feature though. There is a new theme options. There are new theme options for the interpolation mode in between keyframes. So if you have two keyframes with constant interpolation, they will be this slight orange, red. Linear interpolation is green and the rest is blue, like this bluish. In 4.5, this will look all green, all with the same color. Now they have a different color. As you can see at a glance, oh, this actually is linear or constant. The icons now follow the same color. So it's a very subtle change, actually. You probably don't notice, but it's nice to make the connection. And that's it, actually. I was thinking we could actually have it in more places. For example, when you are editing a curve. So you edit a curve, right? This is now red because of the type of handle type. You have vector, which is the same color as the vector nodes. It is, and this is 5.1. And then we have aligned, which is a different color, and then free, which is orange. So this is green, vector. So there are colors identifying the types of handles. So what if we could, what do you think if these nodes, these icons would have that, would follow that color too? Would it get on the way? Would not? So basically this will be purple, this will be green, this will be green, this will be red. What do you think? This hasn't been done yet, and it has to be maybe thought through because this is also available. So these are the handle types. Yeah, these are also available in other places, such as when you have, for example, I think in bevel. So if I do a bevel profile custom, and then I add a point. The icons are also here. However, we could actually also make these handles. Actually, yes, the change could come both ways. So this, the handles here, they could also follow the same colors as this. So if we're gonna have colors, let's have color everywhere. No? A world of colors. That's it. This is a suggestion. This is not there yet. But it should be fairly straightforward to do, and I like it when things give you a hint of what you... Because then you get used to it. It's like, I want vector, the purple one. Okay, next. Add icons to object data. Like add icons to set handle type menu. This is something I should show you without explaining, basically. But this menu to set the handle type, they didn't have an icon before in 4.5. In 4.5, when you edit a curve, so if I add a curve and then I press V, you see there is no icons. So now there is an icon. So we're gonna add colors to the icons in the same release, all in one. Next. Oh, this one is super nice. It adds, this one is by W Cloud, who already made some great changes recently. This adds icons to the object types in the object data pop-up, object the search, basically. So let me just show you this picture. When you're looking for an object, Blender will just show you the list with the name, with their names, right? But it doesn't. The name doesn't tell you enough unless you're really good at naming things. Now they show an icon that actually just I don't know why no one came up with this before, because it wasn't needed really that much code even. You just need to have the brilliant idea, because code-wise it was just adding a check for the object. Super nice, like small things. It uses the same icon that the outliner has, and it even for force objects, which internally they are just empties, they also show the force icon. Super nice. Small tweaks, quality of life. You can see well, actually my quality of life will be even bigger if there was no gap there, but this is not their fault. It's not W Cloud's fault, because this is Blender's weird alignment issues that it has with the icons. But there is work going on. There is one in particular that has to do with the search icon list, which I hope we can work on soon. Which is this. You may recognize the letters L, F for fake user, O for override, L for linked, M for modified, I think. But yeah, the idea is to replace those with icons, so you can actually see at a glance when something is linked, fake user or not. And one nice addition though is that it will show the number of users in the list, so you can tell at a glance if, oh, this orange ribbon has 8 users and it's not a fake user. So the fake or not, you could see it before with the F on the side, but this would be so nice. It's a work in progress already for over a year, but I tested it recently and this is how it looks in the latest Blender. This PR against the latest Blender. But yeah. And here the icons are aligned, so I don't know exactly. I think this whole thing needs a bit of a cleanup. Hopefully for 5.1. I'll try to push for this one. Because it's one of those things that is broken in Blender for so long, but and you fix it once and it's done. It's over. The same with the keymap editor, something I would like to propose for next year. Because it's one of those things that you don't need to make a new, cycles, Eevee, you can make it better. You can keep making it better until the end of the day. But a keymap editor, you just need to be able to replace a key and tell you if it's busy, if the key has a conflict or not. That's it. You don't need to make a new keymap editor every year. And yet we have a really crappy one. So hopefully we can work on it next year. Next, move asterisk before save preferences. This is related. These are two PRs in one, both by Damien Picard, which establishes a new, but not new, but it makes it consistent, the concept that when a label has some kind of data attached to it that is modified, for example, if you have your file and it has been modified, it will have a star up here on the left that says untitled. Or if you have preferences, for example, if I go to preferences and then I modified something in the preferences, then you will see in the, if you don't auto-save the preferences, you will see the button with a star here. So that tells you like, oh, something has been modified. And some software add the star at the end of the string, some at the beginning. In Blender, I think when you modify an image, we used to have this, I think, close or on the other side, but now it's consistent everywhere. The star is before. Why? Well, because if you have the star before, it means that even if the button doesn't have you don't have enough room to display the whole string in the button, you will still be able to see that it's modified or not. So the important information is there. That's it. So thank you, Damian. Next, improve readability or contrast of the node group indicator. So the node group indicator has been added a long time ago in the node groups to tell if something is a node group or not, among other ways of telling, right? You have this giant indicator that says if something is a node group or not. But yeah, the issue was that when this was added, it was a bit too prominent based on some feedback, and it ended up being not prominent enough in some other feedback. So it was made so when you select it, it will be more opaque, and when you don't, it will be transparent. But it was way too transparent. So now it's actually fully opaque always. And it also, when you had selected the item here, you will see the outlines around it. So the stack is also now highlighted. So what I like about this is that when you don't want to know if something is a node group or not, because it becomes less relevant over time, then you can just select it or not. And then you see the little thingy at the bottom or not. And if you really want to know if something is a node group, you have this giant node group indicator on it. Let's see, what else do we have? I think we are almost there. A few typos fixes by Damien. Also, action slot typos in tooltips and labels. Then we have in USD, there is one small improvement that adds the new get prim map API for the on export hook for consistency by Nick Alberelli. In the video sequence editor, there are two changes. One that allow all strips to be used as modifier masks. It was requested to allow strips inside of meta strips to be used as mask for modifiers. There is no need for the mask to be shared between multiple strips. And there is more discussion to follow here. Nice. And last but not least, this is a small quality of life improvement that was based on the Story Tools workflow. So storyboarding. When you're doing storyboarding and you do, you have, well, actually we have this already in Blender, in the storyboarding layout. So you work with scenes, right? And working with scenes, when you duplicate a scene, we now tell you that, hey, you duplicated one scene. Because in the past, Shift D to duplicate on a strip would just duplicate the strip, not the content inside of the strip. But now it does. You can do Alt D if you want, just to duplicate the strip without duplicating the scene inside of that strip. But it wasn't clear because it is a change in behavior from previous versions. So now if you do Shift D, you get a message. Just a small little quality of life. And that is all for this week in terms of what's new in Blender in 1 hour. Let's see how many questions there are. And maybe we can have a short show for once. Let's see. How's everyone doing? Actually, I didn't have a single mate in the whole in the whole show. So how's everybody doing? Okay. All good. Harry Blends is here. How are you preparing for the geometry nodes video updates in 5.0? The changes, the questions let's start from the bottom. There's only 6. So Loganosaurus says, hi Pablo, about a month or 2 ago, I posted a question that seemed to be misunderstood. Sorry. I wanted to ask you about how texture painting will be improved and if it will be improved. Yes, I can already ensure. I can already tell you yes. If you go to the survey.blender.org that we just saw, if you go to the very bottom, or the if you look just for what is it, the thing that it will be improved, development, so satisfaction, areas to focus on, yeah, animation, no, projects to focus on. So that's a bit strange. So area, animation was the top, modeling, painting was only 4th, but if you look at projects, texturing was on top. So that was a bit confusing, but it's very clear. We all know texturing needs to be improved, but not only texture. The thing is that texturing is just one part of the puzzle. There is layer materials, there is baking, texture painting, sculpting, and texturing at the same time, right? UV and wrapping. There's so much, but yeah, developers are aware, and it's one of the projects that we would like to push for next year's 2026. I think the next big thing is the texture caching, which is also related. It's all related, right? But texture caching for cycles. What else? I want to ask about texture painting projection on the model, specifically like vertex painting sculpt mode instead of view space. I really want this feature because Blender is such a good role model for the industry. If not, I would be okay if you gave me some suggestions as to how to texture paint the Blender way. I think texture paint the Blender way, the closest you can get is by using Uku Paint, which is one of the most popular add-ons. If you just refresh the page a few times, it's probably gonna show up here, Uku Paint. Uku Paint of the extension platform. 128,000 downloads. It's basically it's the closest thing to having substance like painting in Blender at the moment. And it's free. It's open source. It's in the extensions. Actually, you don't even need to go to the website. You can just, inside of Blender, you go to get extensions, allow online access if you haven't already, and then you can do Uku Paint, and then just install Uku Paint and use it from, I guess, when you are in other modes. Haven't used it myself yet. That's it. I haven't enabled it actually. Let's see. Q&A. Are we getting... Hello, Aiki7, by the way. How are you? Have you had a good weekend? Are we getting an update on the USD or Alembic file containing various attributes, especially simulations imported from Houdini? Right now, we only get to use the CD color value mostly, including UV2. Anything else gets ignored when imported into Blender. Getting to use those attributes in Geometry Nodes will feel like a blast. Yeah, this was brought up some time ago. I think it's just a limitation at the moment. If Alembic, it only supports this when importing to Blender, not other custom properties. I don't have an answer about this, unfortunately. The workarounds, I think, were using, Geometry Nodes. But unfortunately, there's not one that I know, but maybe someone in the chat has a reply for that. Bye Bye Land says, greetings, Pablo. Greetings, Bye Bye Land. I made this post months ago and right-click select, but due to no activity, I will just put it here, maybe to grab you and the developer's attention. Put basically, the Everything You Need section of the Blender.org website features screenshots from a beta build of Blender 2.80. released more than 6 years ago now. Are there plans to update them to a future newer versions with newer features? I feel ashamed because, I mean, it's literally the homepage. Watch out for the flash. It's a homepage of blender.org, or the homepage of the entire project. And it takes you scrolling a few times just to see already like kids, basically. Ian at VCon19, me at home during COVID. Some really outdated screenshots, as you see, cycles render engine, like the features, and no mention of anything newer than that. Like everything is so old. And to be honest, I would like to do this, but to be honest, there's never time for this. It's like, how do I get this file? I need to set it up nicely, and it's anyone in the community could help with this. So in that thread on right-click select, who else has said like, hey, I'm gonna propose some updates? No one. I know what you mean. I wanted to do it for Blender 5. I'll see if I have time. I want to do it. It's really not time to update the website, just making the images. But maybe we should also do it in a way that we can just run a script, because Blender has an operator to save a screenshot. So we could actually have a script. We could prepare like 5 blend files with this, and then have a script that opens Blender in that one version, saves a screenshot, done. And then I just take those screenshots, I put it on the Blender website, and we have a new version every time. That's my dream. I should do it. Thanks for the reminder. Hello, says Ian. How are you today? I'm good. I'm a bit stressed by the release, to be honest, but it's always like that. There's never a release that gets easy. It's always so much. Every release. But yeah, big releases, 5.0, 4.0, 3.0, they're all big ones. But thank you. Thanks for asking. Speaking of bringing things back, when we have the storyboarding layout and this little narrow sequence editor, which is great for most of the time, it would be so nice to have the ability to quickly enlarge or stretch the view and strips by maximizing an area or entering focus mode instead of the new behavior. If we're speaking of keeping strips tiny and narrow in maximized view, it would be cool to have the backdrop, which we unfortunately do not have anymore. Backdrop would be especially handy while we don't have a sequencer camera overlay yet. Wait, so what is about bringing back? The ability to quickly enlarge or stretch the view and strips by maximizing the area. Okay, what you mean is that there is since a few versions, actually probably 5. So when it used to be in 4.5 that if you add a strip here and then you resize this, it was in 4. Oh, nice, the strip changes. So it was 4.5. So maybe the feature was 4.4. What do you mean? Anyway, the thing was when you scale the editor, it would scale the strips as well, which was a bit silly on my point of view, because if I make this bigger, I don't want to see, like in the viewport, I don't want to see the cube bigger, right? I just want to have more room around it. And the same concept is here. So I make it bigger. I want to see more channels. I want to see what is hidden here behind this. So this was a fix. It was an actual fix in my view. But maybe you disagree with this, and maybe it should be an option. But what kind of option is it? Like, it's a preference, maybe, in the interface, editors, could be sequencer, and say like stretch on full screen, maybe something like that. Because it is a preference, a workflow preference. It's not something I want to do all the time. It makes more sense for me to jump and see more channels than seeing this like this big. Doesn't make much. But yeah, it should be an option then. If more people agree, make a right-click select post, please. And what else? The backdrop. Yeah, the backdrop was removed because apparently not many people were using it, and it gets on the way of supporting HDR properly in the video sequence editor. Actually, that was the main reason why it was removed, for supporting larger dynamic range for the compositor, for the sequencer. Sorry, it's getting late. Next. Great seeing there's even more animation related features scheduled for 5.1 already. I wish to know, for example, in Unity's animation graph editor, you can right click the keyframe and manually select the interpolation mode. Okay, you can also do that. Towards the left or forwards. Okay. That no, you can't. In Blender, if I'm not mistaken, it always assumes it to the right. Not well. Yes and no, I guess, right? Because if you select the keyframes yourself, so say I add some keyframes here and then I rotate, scale. So say I have this, and then I add another keyframe here. So if I want to interpolate this, it would work in the interpolate in what you had selected. So if I press T to set interpolation linear, this will be linear, and this is also linear. Interesting. What if I do it in the graph editor with the, I can do Control Tab, and then I only select these keyframes. Would also work? If I say this, and then I press T linear, in the graph editor, it applies only to the curves. So this is what you mean, that it keeps it Bezier or not, or linear on one side and not the other side. But yeah, I don't, maybe it's not supposed to work that way. Maybe, because I pressed the channel option in the dope sheet here. You see, I only have this. So I press the T, which says set keyframe interpolation for the channel. I should do it only on selection. Type linear, yeah. Maybe it could work on selection. Key interpolation mode constant. Yeah, this option should work on selection. No, it shouldn't work on the entire channel. Maybe it's a bug fix. Report it as a bug. Soro Dean. Hello, Pablo. The new volume nodes look very promising, but I'm a bit concerned with what it means for the future of node-based volume fluid simulations. Will Blender ship with the black box style compiled simulation solvers, or will the solvers are built using the building blocks in geometry nodes? I saw at Blender conference this was discussed briefly in her same lecture. I haven't seen that lecture, so you probably know more than I do, but from what I heard, the idea is to have a combination of both. To have some black box nodes where you have the one node that does it all for you, but then using also closures to be able to have a more, like, in other software, you find the node that does it all, and then you double click and you go in, and then, you can actually see how it's done. And then you double click again and you go deep into you end up in a script and one node that just has some functions written. But yeah, that would be, I think it's a mix from what I know, but actually you may know better from the geometry nodes / hairsim talk at the Blender conference. Anyway, how's everyone doing? I hope you had a nice stream. I did. It was nice to have it a bit more compact this time, and to have a bit more time to actually open Blender and see how things work. I can't believe the demo for the strip info one worked. It's very simple though, but I'm looking forward to see what the community are going to make with that, and which node group assets or effects we can ship with Blender by default. Fade in, fade out, a bit more complex with a texture mask maybe, or which other, I don't know, even wipe effects, like also wipe in, wipe out, those I think would be nice to ship with Blender with, as an example mainly, because you shouldn't have to know every note just to have a little effect, right? It's a good learning opportunity as well. Okay. Next time actually, it's the week of, let's look at the calendar. The next time it is the week of the release, because it will be 11, exactly on the 11th. So I'm not going to do a live stream. I think it's going to be a bit much, but you're going to have some new videos. There's new things we're coming for the, explainer, what's new in 5.0. And I heard a little birdie told me that there might be a new reel or / new features video for 5.0. Still in the plannings, but the idea is to have something else to celebrate 5.0. It's a big release. But yeah, as you can see, 5.1 is already starting to look great, and 5.2, I think the LTS will be top notch. I hope you had a good time. I did too. So I'll see you next time. Not the next in 2 weeks, but in 4 weeks. Damn, when is that? Sometime in the future. And I forgot to mention that Europe switched to Central European time with no summer. It's clear that it's not summer, so it's 1 hour earlier. That's it. Hope to see you next time. Bye bye. New reel, yes. Okay. Have fun. Happy blending. See you in Blender 5.